Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda McClendon, and I am judge of the Second Circuit Court, also a former colleague on the Metro Council with both of the persons that we're going to be hearing from today. Howard Gentry, who, when I was on council, was both a at-large member and a vice mayor. And we also have Jim Schulman, who has had three hats on the council, as a district member, as an at-large member, and now he is he's the vice mayor, but it's also the president of the council. We're here today for another episode arranged by the Women's Political Collaborative on matters and issues important to all of us, or matters that we should be aware of and should be important to us. Please check out the Women's Political Collaborative's website. Join or consider joining. It is many recordings, very much human interests, but especially join and participate in these meetings so we can all learn and grow together. The person I'm introducing today, just for the purposes of our recording, is Jim Schulman. And as I said, he is formerly a council member, councilman at large. He is a father, a husband, director on the Council on Aging, and an all-around good guy. And I think you will agree. And he's been doing a number of these for the Women's Collaborative, and we thank him for that. But anyway, everyone, let's welcome Jim Schulman. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I hear the bells ringing in the back. It means that it's past 12 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. We appreciate everybody being on a Friday. It's beautiful outside. I know it's going to be warm this weekend. I know the Preds are playing tonight. We're down 2-0. Got to get that game. I know that people are starting to get out and do more things as we progress through this pandemic, but always be careful, still be safe. I know Judge Anna Escobar is on this call, so welcome, Your Honor. We've got two judges on. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Howard Gentry, who is our guest today. So Howard and I were fighting before we started as to who was the best looking vice mayor over the years. And we split the vote. It was 1-1. We voted for the other person. But Howard, as Judge McClendon was nice to call me an all around good guy, Howard is a wonderful individual, a very, very good person, has been very involved in Nashville for so many years. Howard and his family heavily involved. Loved your mother, just one of my favorite all-time people. But Howard is our current criminal court clerk. He is a former vice mayor. He is a former council member at large. He is a former all-around person at TSU, including announcing TSU football games. He did some basketball, but he primarily did football games. And he's, which I didn't know, a former college football star.
Oh, well.
I was pushing a little bit.
I played.
He played. I put the star in just because I thought that was appropriate. Because no one can go back that far and check those records. But he played football at Florida A&M, correct? And
Yes.
And he was born here. You were born in Nashville, right?
I was.
And went to high school here. And but your parents had come from different places and then ended up at TSU.
Right.
But Howard is an original Nashvilleian. With that, I'm going to introduce Howard Gentry. He is just one of the all-time good guys in the city. So Howard, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you, Jim, and I appreciate that, Vice Mayor. And I will tell you how the tie was handled. I was the best looking Vice Mayor, but I'm older now, so I did relinquish it to a younger Jim Schulman, and so that's kind of how that went. And y'all can kind of settle it yourselves. And other than that, congratulations to you, Jim Schulman, for your new role at Safe Haven.
Well, thank you.
And
thank you. I
And if
was
that's
actually
supposed to be a secret, you should have told the media.
no, 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 that's not. No, I
Yeah.
thought the secret was to vote about who was the best looking vice mayor, but
Well, that was a secret. We've let that out now. So, yeah, but
don't tell Mr. Briley. Okay, but
yeah, well, he's not on, so he doesn't get to fight for
yeah,
himself.
well, he didn't get any votes anyway, so there you go.
Yeah.
Hey, so
Mhm.
so we're going to talk about restoring voting rights, which is a very key issue, very important. Obviously, lots of things going on all around the issue. With lots of discussions going on, particularly about police reform. I know there's been discussion about bail reform, and then the issues about voting overall. I mean, you've seen in this country questions about restrictions being placed on some of the ability for people to vote. But we're going to talk about trying to restore people's rights to vote. So let's start by, just talking generally about it. Why don't we start with a term that some people don't understand, and that's expungements. Tell me, if you will, and tell the people who are watching, what is an expungement? What does it mean? How do you get it? And what, after it happens, what are the results?
Well, and it's funny about that word expungement. I didn't give a speech. I was actually, well, it was a speech. I was at a public place, and they invited me to get up and speak. And I started talking about expungements, and you could get your records expunged and blah, 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 blah. When I got off the stage, a lady came up to me. She was very upset. She said, when you talk to the people in the community, quit using those big words. What the heck does expungement mean? After I had explained it. And the fact is, I had to understand that everybody doesn't know what expungement means. And, but it's basically getting your record removed. And what people don't realize is that anytime you come to court, General Sessions Court, or anytime you come to court, if you stand before a judge, if you're charged with crime, no matter what happens in that courtroom, when you walk out of the courtroom, the record starts the day that you are arrested or the day that you're booked, or that's when the record starts. And so that record stays with you. And so if you walk out of the courtroom and the judge tells you your case is dismissed, even if you pay the fees, that record stays there until you physically, or an attorney, but you don't need an attorney because it's free, especially if you paid your fees, until you physically walk into the courthouse and fill out paperwork to have your record expunged. And people just don't know that. They don't know it. And I fault the system that we're in for that. I mean, they have to be told. People go to law school to learn the law, so you can't expect just because someone got arrested or ended up having a criminal charge or what have you, that they know these types of things. And so the fact is that in the courtroom, we would like for that information to be given, either through the lawyer, the judge, or what have you. Some courtrooms are very good at doing it. Some are not as focused on that. But we have hundreds and thousands of people, not cases, people walking around the streets in this city who have records that can be expunged that are not expunged because they don't know it. So you ask what happens, and we can talk more about how to know, but what happens is once an expungement process goes through, and there are certain cases that can be expunged, there's certain cases that can't, and the best way to figure that out without spending money with a lawyer is to go on our website, and it's criminalcourtclerk.gov. And I will say it to you again. Of course, everything is www, but it is www.nashville.gov. Lord have mercy. Let's go to this again. It's CCC, I'm not talking about a website. It's ccc.nashville.gov. Criminal Court Clerk, ccc.nashville.gov. But if you go on there, oh, that's so neat. One of my employees stuck it on the chat, and I do have employees listening, and they do keep me straight. But I do know my website. But if you go on the website, you can actually find, if you look for expungements, it will give you the process. It will let you know what cases can and cannot be expunged, and the time frame. For some cases, you might have to wait 5 years. There are different statutes on different types of cases, but the majority of the cases that come through our courthouse, I would say 70% plus, are expungible cases. They might be higher than that.
All right, so people, obviously some people can get it expunged right away, but they don't know. So what are the efforts being done to try to get people, I know people, because we've had this discussion before, people are in, it's intimidating enough, obviously, to be in a courtroom, be in, the courthouse, and you just want to get out of there. You don't want to be in there. And so you're moving quick, you're trying to get out, but you should do this. And the question is, is there a better way for us to be educating people about getting these things expunged?
Well, I think, there are better ways, but I think in our courtrooms, we're starting to be more proactive about it. The state has created some laws that make it a lot easier for judges to be able to start the expungement process from the bench on certain cases. But what we're doing also is going out to the community and having expungement clinics. And Judge Rachel Bell, with her community court, is doing an amazing job of not just expungements, but it has, just to make people aware of their opportunities within the criminal justice system to remove themselves from the maze of the criminal justice system. But Judge Bell has her community court, and every time she opens up, we're there, and we can do the expungement process there. There are churches, there are organizations such as NAACP and numerous other organizations that have events, voter restoration events, expungement events, even job fairs, where we're actually there, because unfortunately, the large percentage of people who are not aware of expungement process is in the communities that need help with services and jobs and housing and what have you. But I will say that there's a large percentage of people who don't have those challenges, who don't really understand it too. So we're out in the community, and it's very public now, and we just keep the word going. COVID has quieted it down a little bit, but I know Judge Bell's getting ready to have her Juneteenth court open on Juneteenth, and so we're getting ready to get it started. And you do have to understand, with expungements, the expungements can only happen in the county where you were arrested. So if it's Sumner County, you have to go to Sumner County. So what we're dealing with here is people who have records within the Davidson County.
Okay, I think Jackie Schrago had asked that question and got answered online. I also see Barry Bernstein has sent a note in that talks about UT College of Law is working on a program. Yeah, University of Tennessee Legal Clinic developing a computer program called expungetn.org that will allow you to do that. So take a look online for that. Howard, tell me, all right, so you're talking about expungement. In terms of voting rights, what's the connection? How does that all work together?
Well, the correct connection is there are certain crimes that are committed. Well, as a matter of fact, if you commit a felony, you can have your voting rights taken away from you. So that's just down and simple. But there are certain felonies that uh, if they are removed, um, can cause a person to be able to get their voting rights back. They don't necessarily have to be expunged all the time, but the fees have to be paid. They cannot have the fees paid. But in our office, if you're paying your fees or if you're getting your fees waived and you no longer have that case, we're not going to let you walk out without doing the paperwork to have your records expunged. What has happened in the state of Tennessee, and there was a period in between the 70s and the 80s, where once a person's paid their dues or did their time or whatever they needed to do, their records were expunged or gone. But the fact is, and I'm using gone for a reason, because if people don't understand what expunge means, it means to go, to be removed. But except for those years, Tennessee has passed legislation that removes people's rights to vote after most felonies occur. And the process to get those rights back is cumbersome. At least it's you have to go to the pardons and parole office. They have to determine what cases you have. Then you've got to come to our office, and we need to determine whether fees are owed, and we had to let you know whether those cases can be um, um, well, forget expungement, but we have to go through our process. And then after that process, you have to uh, go to the election commission to um, file the proper paperwork to have your voting rights restored. And it's just, it's a maze. Once a person gets out of prison or jail, or once a person goes through the court system and it's all said and done, that person would like to feel that they could be human again. They could be a human being in society, having the rights that they deserve to have. And for a person to not have the right to vote is, as a citizen, you cannot feel whole. There's just no way you can. And you would think that once that person's crime is that whatever prices had to be paid for it in whatever manner, that they should be able to go in the voting polls and vote. Now, there's certain crimes that maybe you shouldn't get your voting rights back, rape and murdering and crimes like that. But for the majority of crimes that are committed are not at that level. They're not anywhere near that level. But once that person comes out of jail or prison or out of the court process, when they have to start moving through all the steps that it requires to get your voting rights back, they get frustrated. They get frustrated because at every step, there is some information that you got to take to the next step. And then it's frustrating. And then it takes time. And a lot of the people that come out of jail or prison don't have transportation. They don't have, they don't even know where to start. And so they just don't do anything. Well, we have developed a process and a partnership within our office whereby those steps are handled by us. And a person can actually, in most cases, come into our office and never even have to go to the election commission.
Well, let me go back and ask you about that, because you were going through all the different steps initially that people have to go, and there's lots of steps, it sounds like. Go all the way back. Okay, so first of all, do people realize, maybe it's a two-part question, people coming out of a facility, do they know, do they even remember that their voting rights may have been taken away? And then two, do they get some type of indication that if they want to restore their voting rights, they need to go, like here, they need to go to your office to get help? How does somebody even realize, first of all, that their voting rights have been taken away? And then second of all, how do they know how to get the process started to get them restored?
A lot of people don't find out their voting rights have been taken away until they try to vote. They just don't know. And I don't know about the process outside of my office, but I will say that my office should not be the beginning of that process. My office should be, and I'm not saying because we don't want to be, but if you're on parole or if once you leave prison, surely there should be a process that I think, unfortunately, we're not that state, but there are states that when a person walks out of prison, they get their voting rights back. Once they've served their time, once they've done everything they're supposed to do, they might have some parole or something they got to do. They might hold it for a while. But once they've done everything they need to do, they get their voting rights back. So I don't know what happens when that person walks out of the prison. I don't know what happens when that person sits down with their parole officer and what have you. I've never been through that process. The only thing that I do know is we have thousands of people that walk into our office wanting to get their records expunged. We have thousands of people that are out here trying to get them, not expunged, but their voting rights back. Thousands of people that are wanting to get their voting rights back. We have thousands of people that don't know that they don't have voting rights until they go and try to vote. And I know it's confusing. And what I do know is we started trying to create a process in 2019 that would help people who come into our office get their voting rights restored. We fine-tuned it and created the partnership with the paroles and prison parole and also the election commission. And what I do know is that since that time, we have restored or had restored over 1,000 people's voting rights, or let's say we processed over 1,000 people's voting rights, because what I don't know is how many of them that process actually was completed at the election with the election commission. I would assume most. And in the last term, in the last year, we've done over 500. And so,
wouldn't it be interesting to know, and I don't know this either, and there may be, obviously there's some chat going on about some groups that do some of this work, but particularly for individuals who have been incarcerated for a while who are coming out, whether there is a program, whether before those doors open, whether there's a program to say, okay, so, these are resources available, these are things that you should know, and if you want your voting rights restored, this is, particularly if you have to do it by county, this is what you need to do. And I'm not sure, I think you're saying, I'm not exactly sure what is being told to people before they go out. Yeah.
But if there was a process started before, then all we would need to do in that process, really our only responsibility, is to ensure that the fees are paid.
Okay, so start with that. So let's say that somebody comes out of a facility and wants their voting rights restored. They find a particular group who says, you can get your, based upon the nature of the felony, you can get your voting rights restored. Go to the criminal court clerk, they'll help you. Okay, so kind of walk us through when somebody shows up at the door at your office and says, I want to get my voting rights restored. now take us through how difficult is that to do that? You talked about this maze.
If they come through the office and decide that they want their voting rights restored, if they come into our office,
Right.
then it's not difficult anymore.
Okay.
We'll find out what charges are keeping them from getting their voting rights back. We'll communicate with pardons and paroles. We will have the necessary paperwork for them to sign, and we will determine whether the fees have been paid or not, because that's our responsibility, and we'll sign off on that. And then we will give them the paperwork, have them fill out the paperwork. If they can't do it, we'll help them for the election commission, and we'll send that to them. They just
And that's it.
They go home and wait for the card to come. Unfortunately, but what would be so much more helpful is if we had a system inside the prison that does the works that groups like Free Hearts does, that they do all this for them. And they work with us to get the information they need from us. And by that time they would come out, that would already be, that process would already be done. Even having to come to our office doesn't make me comfortable, because how many people don't know that? How many see we're not the first step in Tennessee's process. We just have determined that we can handle their first step for them if they come in our office. But the reality is the way the process is in the state of Tennessee, the first step would be them going to pardons and paroles, then them getting stuff signed off on, then them bringing it to us to get us to sign off on the fees and fines, and then us sending them, or not sending them, but then them having to go to the election commission to fill out the paperwork. We are not the first step in the state's system. And
do you think it's I'll be careful how I ask this, but I mean, it sounds like what your office has done is figured out a way to make it easier for people to get through this thing, which if they were doing it step by step would be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And would be frustrating, and people would just at some point would just say, I give up.
They give up, and it
Right.
takes years. And what I have to be careful is even on this interview is to not say that we are that the process belongs to us. We because it doesn't. We are
Right.
not. There is a statute there. There are laws, and there's a process that people have to go through. We've just figured out a way to streamline it if they end up coming to us. And I'll be honest, I've stepped out a little bit, as I am right now on this interview, by saying we can do this for them. But the laws were not written for it to start with us. But if it ends up coming to us, then we can help them to be able to move through the process. And
Okay.
I'm very careful here.
All right, so I'll be careful how I ask all these questions, and you know. So, are other criminal clerks' offices around the state doing the same type of thing that you're doing?
None that I know of.
Okay.
None.
All right.
I know that Memphis has inquired, and we've given them all of our information, but I don't know if they are or not right now. But I'm not aware, and no.
Okay. Let me ask you this and see if you can answer this question. Are you aware of efforts that are being made to simplify this process so it's not so difficult, or some language that maybe does kind of centralize it in a place where it's easier for people to be able to get their voting rights restored?
I know that there's an attempt to create laws at the state level to make it a more simple process if, but those laws have not been successful. But there are still efforts toward that.
Okay.
And
Are you aware of other states that have simplified their process?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of what,
we're one of the most difficult states. It's about 5, 6 of us. Yeah.
okay. So in terms of what your process is within the criminal court clerk's office, did you all kind of model? Did you all look at the program and then go, okay, there's another state, another group that's out there, and this is what we should try to model?
We had an employee. We always have been in the process because there are nonprofits. I mentioned Free Hearts, but there are nonprofits out here and that have always helped. I mean, NAACP, you've got some Project Return and other organizations have always been in the mix to help people get their voting rights back. But we didn't have a model. I had a desire to see if we could do anything when after seeing that there was such a problem, to see if there was anything we could do to help through the process. And then I had an employee who asked if she could really work with the state and with the election commission to see if she could create a smoother situation. And really, Lillian actually came up with a process that worked, and we fine-tuned it, and it works for us. But I will be very careful to offer that model to other counties because it does require a lot of work and a lot of effort. Well, I wouldn't be careful. I would be hesitant to say that people there's gonna be a lot of people coming and running to us to kind of put that in effect in their offices because it involves it takes time, employee, and resources. But that's the cost of that's my statement. Even I make to you all at budget time. That's the cost of doing it the right way and doing it the fair way. And but I don't want to judge or shine any negative light on any other counties. That's up to them. But we did not have a model to go by within the state of Tennessee, and so we created our own.
Let me ask you this. This is another good question for you. So obviously, criminal courts. Every county has a criminal court clerk. Is that right?
A clerk that handles criminal courts. Not all of them are called criminal courts.
So some of them handle just
there's a clerk to handle criminal. Yes.
Is there an association of clerks around the state that actually meet? Okay. And does this ever get brought up as a topic?
Starting to be discussed more.
Okay. So it is one of those things that has the possibility of looking at it in terms of maybe simplifying the process, making it consistent, and trying to make it so that people don't have to jump through so many hoops to try to figure this out.
Yes, the state could help a whole lot though by taking a lot of the hoops away, and it wouldn't make it so difficult for the counties and the clerks to be able to help someone, because then all they will have to do is just sign, I think it's section 304, and say the fees are paid. And so that would be a very easy thing. But as it relates to this process, you've been a councilman at large, now you're vice mayor. So have you ever, no, not have you ever, you have seen laws and initiatives evolve. We're in the early evolutionary stages. So it's going to have to be a change of culture within the system. And there's really going to have to be a state law change to really make it smooth and efficient and effective for everyone.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me about how does the federal stuff come into play? Is there a connection? Is there a whole different process if a federal crime is committed? I know you deal from the state standpoint, but do people?
Yeah.
How does that work with the feds? Do you know?
Well, with the feds, I'm to be honest with you, I'm really not sure, but I'm sure one of my people is going to put it up on this
Okay.
on this chat real quick. But and then because I know that they're on, I'm not going to venture into what I think. I think I do know, but I want to be sure. So I know they're probably sitting there saying, "Just be quiet, Mr. Gentry. Let us."
You and I are very much alike in terms of that.
Yeah.
I try never to answer a question I don't know.
Well, but now my excitement is, are they going to tell me what I think I already know? And I'm
Okay, well, we'll see if it pops up.
I'm gonna let you know if I didn't. I'm gonna let you know if I didn't. I'm okay with not knowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a couple of more specific questions and then a couple of bigger ones about the numbers. You had talked about cost.
Okay. I can't control myself. We don't handle federal cases, so I would assume that only a state charge would be something that we'd be dealing with. And so anyway, I'm gonna shut up now.
I figured that was right, but I also figured that you may end up with people walking into your office that would go like, "I want my voting rights." I don't know how it works from the federal standpoint.
Mhm.
I just was
Yeah.
curious.
Not
Okay.
only-
All right. Let's go to you talk about cost, okay, and the fact that there are costs associated with this. Explain to people what that means. What are these costs that you're talking about? I know a lot of them are court fees and things like that. What are they? How often did they change? And what happens if people can't pay them?
Well, the fees and fines can come from. Well, I mean, of course, you have court costs. That's always going to be there, a court cost.
Mhm.
And so if the case is in Davidson County, there's going to be a court cost, and that comes.
And what is that? Is that set by state law? Is that
State by yeah. It's most of the costs that are set by Metro have we've not most of them, but there are very few of them are Metro based charges. But court costs is state. Even fines and fees can be state mandated. So they come from numerous areas, but as a person comes out of, say, prison, they could have a whole bunch of charges. I hope they don't, but they could. But there are only certain of those charges that are actually affecting their voting rights. So the only charges that they have to deal with to get their voting rights back are the charges that are affecting their voting rights.
And tell me how that works. There's certain
you just, it's according to what I mean. There's a list of charges that are eligible.
Okay.
Let's go with the ineligible because that's fewer. There are charges that make you ineligible for your voting rights to be restored, and there's certain charges that don't affect your voting rights. So if you have some misdemeanors, or if you have felonies, if you have charges, any charges, like, okay, let's say misdemeanors, if they're in there too, and they're not affecting your voting rights, the only thing that we need to deal with is the charge that actually put you in prison and cause you to lose your voting rights. So if there are other charges surrounding it that didn't, or that you've had in the past or whatever, that's not important as it relates to you getting your voting rights back. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I was going to say, how much, when we talk about that, how much money are we talking about that somebody, okay, so So I've lost my voting rights. I'm in your office and you're looking at my record, and now you can distinguish certain costs that are associated with it. So if, as somebody listening to this, I'm going like, so I got to pay to get these fees taken care of before I can get through the rest of the process.
Right.
What are people usually looking at in terms of what they have to pay? Because obviously there's going to be a follow-up question to this question that I just asked you. Is it a lot? Is it a couple of $100s? What is it?
It can go anywhere from a couple $100s to tens of thousands of dollars, according to what type of crime it is. Now normally the large amounts like that are usually drug related or what have you, and a lot of them wouldn't qualify for voting right restoration anyway. But there could be anywhere from being in the hundreds to being in the thousands. And unfortunately, for every type of crime, there are different fees and fines and charges. So it's no standard amount that you pay walking into the courtroom
Right.
because because the legislature creates charges. These
All right.
are
So
all statutes.
So you know what the next question is going to be to you. It's going to be, and you probably can't answer this, but well, I mean, the first answer is, if I've lost my voting rights and I'm coming in, and this is not you, it's just that you have the process. In order to get my rights restored, I have to get those fees taken care of. So if I don't have the money to get those fees taken off, I can't get my voting rights restored.
So there are options.
Okay.
One option is that if you are truly indigent, which means that you do not have a job, you might have a disability, but the fact is you're just not working. And if it can be determined through our compliance office or through the judge that that you are not working and do not have income, then a judge has the authority to determine you indigent and your fees can be waived. You can be placed on a payment plan by a judge or even by our office if you do have income and feel that you have the ability to pay on a payment plan, but your payment has to be completed before you can get your before we could check off the paid section of the petition for voting rights. And so those are, or you pay your fees. So those are your options. You have a payment plan, you have, or agencies outside of government can actually come in and pay your fees for you if they are helping you through this process.
Right. One of the questions, I figured there were outside groups, and I think one of the questions that would follow from all this is, so I come in, I don't have the money to pay the fees. One of the options is to go before a judge and get either be declared an indigent and get those fees waived, or come up with a payment plan. But doing that also costs money, because you may, unless you just do it pro bono, you've got to figure out how to get that proper paperwork filed with the court. Correct?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so there are different groups out there, obviously, that would be helpful to an individual walking in and going like, I'm lost and I don't have the money to do this, but I really would like to get my voting rights restored. All right. So tell me this, and I'm watching our time. There are certain felonies. What?
You want to read? Wait a minute. We got to go back. You want to read the answer that came in on federal cases?
Yeah, sure. There it is.
Federal criminal charges are effects on voting rights are determined state by state. Same as state charges. Similar form has to come from the federal clerk and probation and parole. So the federal courts can send us the form um, from the federal clerk and probation and parole. So
Okay.
I guess
Okay.
we are able to do that, and I was wrong. So, but I'm glad I'm wrong, because that gives us, that means that we don't have to send the person outside of our office
Yeah.
also. Now, I don't know, wait a minute, let me stop on that. I'm not certain that we have the same partnership at the federal level as we do at the state level. So I'm not certain it is as simple, but at least we are able to help them process it through our office.
Yeah, I got it. You know, what's interesting, Howard, is we're talking through this, and good questions coming from people. Obviously, they're interested. As much as your office is trying to simplify this process, it's not easy. I think you said that at the very beginning. And there are ramifications, there are different things moving around, different court costs, as you said. Some that if you don't pay, you can't move forward. Some that you don't have to worry about to move forward. It's like there are all these hurdles that are going on to make it well, it's a challenge to get all the way through, I guess.
Well, Jim, you know, during this interview, I know that there are people out here listening saying, what, huh? Really? And that's how complicated it is. I mean, I cannot even sit here, even with a full staff, not a full staff, but a lot of my staff online listening and watching. And there's no way on some of these questions that I can give you a complete, clear, concise answer. And the reason is because there is the process is so disjointed and it's just so wrong and unfair. And we could fix it so easily, especially on this. We've spent this whole section on uh, uh, voter restoration and talking about different scenarios, and all of them have um, and and I know it makes me sound like I don't know what I'm doing, but I actually do know what I'm doing. And what I'm doing is I'm functioning between a dysfunctional process, and I'm making it as functional as we can and as we have the authority and the ability within the law to do. And it's not easy.
No, I think you do know what you're doing. I think
We
you're
know what
doing
we're doing,
the
but
best you can.
still
with a,
unfortunate
yeah,
that it's so difficult, and it's just not right. It's just, you know, and I can criticize it because I'm a part of it. And so I can be critical of myself. So nobody can sit out there saying, man, he's saying bad stuff about me in the state. I am the state. I am the
you're
government.
doing,
And I'm
you're
doing the job.
trying to deal with a difficult process.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So for people also watching, you had said before, which adds a whole nother loop to this thing. Some people cannot have their voting rights restored, correct?
Right.
Some people will never get through that.
Okay.
Which crimes, which felonies are where, you know, even if they show in your office and they want to pay they're not going to be able to get their voting
Jim,
rights
it's
back.
a lot of them. And what I would suggest, because I don't have the list in front of me, but they can actually go online and if you just Google voting restoration in the state of Tennessee, it will give you all of those cases. And I know somebody just put up murder, treason, voter fraud are some of them. And that's the truth. They are, but it's more. And so it would be easier for that person or those persons to read that. At least even with expungements, it's a long list of what can and can't be, and they change periodically. And so with every legislative session, there's a possibility that some can change, some of the some of the periods of time that you have to wait. So it's always a moving target. I'm glad it's moving because normally as it moves, it gets better. And
Okay.
so, but I don't, I could pull the list real quick and start listing them, but we did get, Amy did send out 3 or 4 of them that are correct.
Okay. A couple more questions.
Unfortunately, the ones
Yeah.
that keep you from getting it, that list is a lot shorter than the ones that do not keep you from getting
Right.
it.
So we've got a couple more minutes left. So tell me, you were talking about numbers before. And one of the questions that I had was, do you know approximately how many people could have their rights restored in Davidson County? And is it a large number? Are we talking about
No,
lots and lots of people?
let me tell you, I'm going to get political here. It could
Okay.
change an election. That's how many it is.
Okay.
That's how many it is. Statewide, nationally, and locally. It's huge. The number's huge. It's huge. And it is. But you know what else it could change? It could change a whole community. It could change a whole nation because people now will be able to have their voices heard and to be able to have a just have a voice in society and become more of a part of society and the better our people get, the better our communities are. And so I think it would have a huge effect on just the state of Tennessee, not just Nashville, but the numbers are huge. I told you earlier, back a few years ago, we determined there were over 130,000 people who we actually could identify that were eligible to have their records expunged. That means that the case was dismissed or nolly and the fees were paid or there were no fees charged. Those people could automatically just come in here and fill out paperwork and have the records expunged. We tried, Judge Bell was one, and we tried to get an ordinance passed or law, whatever, no ordinance, to allow us to move toward expunging those people. Some people, you can't, believe it or not, some people don't want the records expunged, especially persons who are immigrants or whatever, because they might need records to basically ensure that they are here and doing and a part of society. And then others need it for other reasons. But the vast majority of people, these records are hurting them. And just to know that, I'm sure the number has grown. I'm sure the number has grown. When I became criminal court clerk, and I'm going back to expungements now, we were averaging about 12, 13,000 expungements a year. Before COVID, we were averaging over 30,000 expungements a year. And we're still, and that number is going to keep increasing. So I still kind of put expungements and voting restoration kind of together because most times you're dealing with the same population that are needing both. And so it's just a need that could actually cause people to be able to, their whole lives to change. And if they get better, we get better. They become employed. They're able to get their own housing. They're able to, some can go to school if those records are gone and expunged. And if they are able to do these things, they get better. They're able to get employment and contribute to the economy and become tax-paying citizens. I mean, what is the downside of giving people their freedom? Even after they made a mistake, there is no downside.
So Mr. Curlin asked about a certificate of restoration. Is that required? There it is. Even with an expungement, does the state still require a certificate of restoration, or do you know?
A certificate of restoration?
Yeah.
You're talking about for voting rights now.
Yeah, she's got it listed. She's got it listed with expungements, but it's a certificate of restoration.
Well, okay, if it's with the expungements, this is how the expungements go. Once we expunge your records, we send you a notice, a letter that that record has been expunged. And that is provided to you. But once that is done, you no longer have a record in my system.
Okay.
So there's no certificate or anything that I can give you. But I think if that's what they're asking,
Yeah. Voter reg.
no.
But okay. So the answer is no.
Once you get your record expunged, I'm reading with you.
Yeah, I am
Once
too.
you get your record expunged, as Jessica already did, then you do not have to check that you have a record.
All right. Two quick questions as we close out. One, from a national perspective, do you see a national move towards getting this straightened back up so that it's consistent statewide? Or, because I know, well, and maybe nationally you can't do it because there's all that, obviously we just went through the election where everybody's fighting over election, processes, or saying they need to be consistent, but obviously they're left up to the states. Any national move to get this thing straightened back up, or can they even do that?
I don't know. I mean, that goes into another area. Do you really want federal government dictating, how states function? And, I don't know. Sometimes I do, most times I don't. And so I know there's a national conversation about the effects of it, of voters not having their rights to vote. And there's always been a national discussion about how unfair it is to require someone or making it difficult for someone to get their voting rights back. It's basically akin to voter suppression. But the reality is, I think that it's going to probably always be a state issue.
Last question, and we've got 1 minute left. If people, people listening, or people, are talking about this out there and they're confused or whatever, where would you send them? If the one place to get them started, to start figuring out so they can get on the right path to figure this out?
Right now, I would have to say criminal court clerk's office.
Okay, that's what I figured you'd say.
Because if they're listening and want to get an answer or want to get started immediately, even though we do have nonprofits all over the city, but you're asking me, I can't send somebody away. I will not do that. I will not recommend that you go here or go there. I mean, because I know we can do it from this point. And so I would say to contact our office, 862-56. Oh, that's my number, isn't it? Oh my goodness. Yeah, but anyway, 862-5611. That's my number. But you can call the criminal court clerk's office and get that process started. And even though there are other agencies, and even though the state has a process, but for me to not say that would just be counterproductive.
Well, so Andy just put on the main number, I think.
Hey, 862-5601.
Yeah, there you go.
862-5601.
All right. Mr. Gentry, our criminal court clerk, all around good guy, thank you for your time. This has been really, really interesting. I know it's a complicated process. You're working hard to get it as the best you can under control. There are so many different parts and pieces coming in. You're doing great. Thank you so much for the time.
I will say we left out one. Congressman Cooper's office is working with this too, and they're doing it big time. Yeah. And I don't want to leave them off because they're
Sylvia had said something that they're involved as well. So
Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
think we
thank
got
you,
it.
Jim. I appreciate it. Good luck to you and all you're doing.
Well, thank you. Hey, everybody have a wonderful weekend. Go Preds tonight. Be safe. Mr. Gentry, once again, thank you for your time. Always great to see you, and keep up the good work. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.